Number one rule of Wall Street. Nobody, I don't care if you're Warren Buffett or if you're Jimmy Buffett, nobody knows if the stock is going to go up, down, sideways, or in circles. Least of all stockbrokers. Right? It's all a fugazi. You know what a fugazi is?
Oh, fugazi. It's a fake.
Yeah, fugazi. It's a wazi, it's a woozy, it's a fairy dust.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video with Swaggle Haas. And in this video, we're going to talk about comic book investing, but specifically a more important idea that I think we don't talk about enough, especially in the comic book investing, collecting hobby, and that is this idea of entry points. Now, what are entry points? Well, in this video, we're going to talk about that and why I think that it might be more important to focus on an entry point rather than what specific book you want to be investing in. But before I get into the video for today, if you guys could drop me a like or a comment or subscribe if you're enjoying the content, help support the channel, do one of those things, I would appreciate it. But let us get into this topic here today. And let me preface this by saying this is not financial advice. You know, we're just here in the hobby of collecting. We're talking about comic books, and I'm just going to kind of share with you guys my perspective when it comes to investing into this hobby or investing in comic books. Again, take everything I say with a grain of salt. Don't listen to me. I'm somebody who unironically likes Darkhawk. So what the hell do I know? But with that said, let's talk about this idea here today with entry points, because I get a lot of messages from people who watch the channel, whether they be YouTube comments or maybe people will shoot me an email from time to time or will shoot me messages on Instagram, and they'll ask me questions that are like, hey, do you think that such and such book is a good investment? Or, hey, I have the opportunity to buy this book, or I have the opportunity to buy this book. Which do you think is a better investment? And while I do think there are times where there is a clear-cut answer to some of those questions, I think a lot of the times I try to remind people that, you know, depending on what you're spending for a certain book should really be the answer to your question of if it is a good investment or not. Because unlike, say, stocks or real estate or, you know, any other type of asset class that are investment opportunities for people to park their money, comic books are a little bit different in that although there is a fair market value for a certain comic book, just because there is a certain determined fair market value doesn't mean that you can actually find that book at that price. And just because a book seems like a good investment because it is a blue chip key doesn't mean the price in which you buy it at the current market value for it is actually being sold at a price that makes it a good investment. But before I kind of really dig into this and get too long-winded, let's first kind of establish what entry point really means. And I pulled up this Investopia article, and let's kind of go through the definition and see if we can kind of come to a better understanding of it overall. But this is, again, an article from Investopia, and we're talking about entry point here. So what is an entry point? Entry point refers to the price at which an investor buys or sells a security. The entry point is usually a component of predetermined trading strategy for minimizing investment risk and removing the emotion from trading decisions. A good entry point is often the first step in achieving a successful trade. So again, the entry point in a nutshell, again, is going to be what level or what price are you buying into this asset for, right? So if I'm someone who is buying into, let's say, Amazing Fantasy 15, if I can get Amazing Fantasy 15 for $5, well, that's a fantastic entry point. So again, depending on the price in which you pay for a certain asset can be a good or bad entry point, depending on what the intrinsic value of that asset may eventually become. Now, again, with comic books, it's really different because comic books are something that don't have like a typical market value. I mean, there is the, you know, values you can pay for on eBay, and that's a certain type of entry point, but you could also be someone who just inherits a collection, or maybe you find your neighbor selling a collection and you pay like, 25 cents on each book right there, and you found yourself with Amazing Fantasy 15 for, $100. And that would be a fantastic entry point into that book as well. So one of the things I think that is really important for us as like comic book investors is that you really need to focus on your entry point. Now, there's a lot of channels out there, including myself, and I'm definitely not innocent of this, but there are channels out there that talk about, books to invest in, or hey, should you buy this book? Is this book a good investment? Is this book a good spec? And ultimately the answer to those questions is, nobody really knows, and each individual situation might be different. Like there are certain books that show up on cover prices list every single week, and you could make the argument that now would be a terrible time to buy any of those books. But if you happen to go to your LCS and see that being sold in a back bin, for $1, then that book is a great time to buy. So it actually doesn't matter when is the right time to buy something, or if you should invest in a certain book, or if you should buy a certain book, or should or shouldn't, or whatever the case may be. The only thing that really matters is the price that you're going to be paying for that particular book at that particular time. Because again, what makes for a good investment? A good investment is simply something that you can sell for more than what you originally paid for it. And if you can find a book at a discount in an LCS, or you can find a book like, in a collection, or you can find a book at auction that sells under fair market value, then it could be a very, very good investment, even if it is not necessarily the right time to buy because the book is super, super hot. So let's kind of dig into this a little bit more. I kind of want to show you guys, just to sort of really nail home the point, like what I mean by this, as far as like, just because something might be a quote unquote good investment doesn't mean the price in which you enter at it is actually the right time to buy. So let's talk about a book that is unequivocally a good investment as far as blue chip comic book investments are concerned. And that of course is Amazing Fantasy 15, right? I mean, I think if we're talking about, comic books you can quote unquote invest in, or comic books that are, going to go up in value, blue chip comic books, I think everybody would agree that Amazing Fantasy 15 of all comic books on the market would be a good book to have in your collection. But the thing about this, and again, this is what makes comic book collecting so different, is that just because there's a fair market value for this book along all the grade levels doesn't mean that you can actually find that book being sold at that fair market value. So let's say that, I'm somebody who wants to invest in Amazing Fantasy 15, and I want to be able to get my hands on this book. And I go over to eBay and I search for Amazing Fantasy 15, 1962. I go to buy it now. And let's just go and find kind of like, what we can get for this book at this current level. So if I look right here, Amazing Fantasy 15 CGC 1.0, right? This is the cheapest non-restored graded version of this book that I can find right now on eBay. It's a 1.0. It's being sold for $36,900. So let me go to the fair market value of the 1.0 grade here. Go Collect suggests that this fair market value is $13,500. 30-day moving average for this thing, again, is the last one that sold January 2nd here for $16,000. Sometime before that, there was a sale that was $28,000. Sometime before that, there was a sale for $15,000. And then the time before that, another sale for $15,600. So again, is Amazing Fantasy 15 a good investment? Well, in a vacuum, yes, it is a good investment. But if my entry point into this book at the 1.0 grade is $36,900, and that's not even including tax, then that right there is not necessarily a good investment, because how long will it take for me to be able to resell this book at that price range that I aggressively bought into? And even though I'm sure at some point way in the future, due to the rate of inflation, this book's fair market value at the 1.0 grade will eventually go to $36,000 or whatever the case may be. But again, how long is it going to take to get there? If I have to park my money into a book for, 10 or 15 years just for it to get to that $36,000 range, well, that's a terrible investment, because I could have used that money and that liquidity and put it into something else, some other asset, some other book that eventually would appreciate at a better rate. So again, even though Amazing Fantasy 15 is a great investment and the ultimate blue chip book, I might have been better off buying other books that were around that same $36,000 price point, and I could have gotten more money on my return because my entry point into those books would have been better off. So similarly, again, let's just kind of nail this point home and look at some of the other books that are available here. Again, the 3.0, if I wanted to get a 3.0 of this thing, it's being sold right now on eBay for $50,000. Fair market value for this, it suggests $31,000, would be the highest entry point this book has ever had for this particular grade level. So again, is something like an Amazing Fantasy 15 a good investment? Well, it just really depends on if you buy it and what level you buy it at, and how long will it take for your money to properly appreciate into something that gives you that ROI. You know, one of the reasons why I personally like to buy so many books in person and go out to LCSs and do comic book haul videos is because what I'm looking for when I'm out there hunting is to be able to find books that are being sold for under market. You know, if I have to pay the eBay price, I'm paying, you know, this premium market price. And if I am able to find a book at an LCS being sold at half of that, well, I know that, you know, the investment I'm doing into a particular book or my entry point into that book is a pretty safe one overall. And I can be assured that I've mitigated my risk into that book correcting down to a level that, you know, it can no longer yield a certain price. So if there's a particular hot book, you know, that week that's being sold for $40 on eBay, if I'm able to find it for $15 in an LCS, even if the book corrects back down to, you know, 20 or whatever the case may be, just because I found it at such a good entry point, it still makes it a good investment for me because it is now still being sold at a higher point than which I paid for it. Similarly, just because, you know, we did a video last week where we talked about Werewolf by Night 32, and I was talking about if Moon Knight's first appearance was actually going to be a good time to buy this book. Again, that video right there was sort of demonstrating, like, in a vacuum, if you're able to land these books at these certain fair market value prices, would it be a good time to buy at these fair market values? But again, because comic book collecting is so different than that of, you know, stocks or whatever, like if I want to buy Apple stock today, I can have it at market. But if I want to buy Werewolf by Night, I have to pay whatever prices are available to me. So this is another one that, you know, it's a little bit interesting. You have to focus more on the entry point of this book. But just let's take a look at some of the 7.0 grades, because that's one of the tiers that I was evaluating. Fair market value for that suggested around 2,600. So if we look at just like some of the recent purchases of this book, we can kind of determine if someone made a good investment or a bad investment. So if I look at, you know, this right here and this book last year in the summer, someone got this book for $1,655.73. And then just a few days later, someone paid $2,277. So, you know, again, is this a good time to buy? Is this going to be a good investment for this particular person? Well, the person who got this for $1,600 is definitely going to get a good return on their money. Their entry point into the book was so low that, you know, this is for them a great time to buy this book and is going to become a great investment. But if we rewind the clock to just a week before, someone bought this book for $2,950. So they're already at the $3,000 entry point level. So for them, is this book going to be a good investment? Well, I'm not so sure, because, you know, maybe right now you can get the book on eBay for like $2,700. Maybe it'll go back up to $3,000, or maybe it'll correct back down, you know, after we get the show. So is that going to be a good investment for them? It might not be, because their entry point was too high overall. So that is all I have for this video. That was just me talking about this idea of entry point and just kind of emphasizing to you guys, you know, when you're out there thinking about like what comics you want to invest in, sometimes, you know, it's not as important to think about what book you are investing in, rather than just thinking about, you know, what books do you have opportunities for and what entry points can you get in with certain books. And that might be the best way for you to get the most ROI in your investment. Now, of course, this is just talking about, you know, the financial side of comic books. I think you're always best, you know, investing in books that you actually really like. So remember, always buy what you like. Anytime I spec on a book, I'm always buying what I like anyways. So that way, if I do lose out on my investment, I'm not so sad about having to hold this book that has lost out on a lot of money, because I personally still love this thing. So that's all I have for this video. Remember, focus on those entry points. You know, where you buy in is really, really the key to making a good investment. Let me know what you guys think. Drop me a like, comment, subscribe if you're enjoying the content, and I will see you in the next video.